Sanders trying to slow the game down. We see that Gorman dies Snorlax in the active spot, one of the key cards to the setup of his deck.
Yes, of course, with that ability allowing you to draw until you have 7 cards in hand, of course, ending your turn afterwards. But, you know, most of the time you don't really care about attacking too much early on, so that's exactly the kind of early setup card that is perfect for these control-style decks.
So Lucas surely is aware of who Sander is and what type of deck
Yes.
Sander is playing. And when you go into these matches, you can't really play against a control deck in the same way that you would normally try to operate and set up your deck. So what do you think some of the things are Lucas should try to do to be mindful of maybe what Sander's potential strategy is?
I think it's a little bit tough because although Lucas will be aware that Sander is playing some form of control variant, he probably doesn't know exactly what sort of shape that control takes yet. You know, Sander, there might be some murmurs in the venue about what he's sort of playing, and I mean, from what we do know so far, Sander his control style is very much targeting down Lugia, right? You see 4 of the Yveltal that discards all the special energy.
Yes.
And
yeah, that 4 Yveltal from that Celebrations set, that Cry of Destruction attack, really strong against an all-special energy deck like the Lugia V-Star. And that's what Sander is very good at. He's great at identifying, okay, these are the popular decks in the format. We've got the all-special energy Lugias. We've got the all-special energy Mew decks. This random holo card from the Celebrations expansion turns out is pretty decent into these cards.
And it's not one that's completely unknown, right? It's one that has seen some tech play in the past before, you know, in the various different decks, but this is the first time I think we've really seen it being full-on focused on as a main strategy. And given that we know, you know, Lugia is this new force that relies entirely on special energy, I think it's very, very heads up and clever of Sander to sort of focus down on this path in terms of optimizing control for this format.
Of course, Sander very famously at the North American International Championships this year made top 4 with a Mewtwo V Union control deck. That deck also utilized some of the same cards we'll see today, that Snorlax, the Yveltal that we mentioned, but you'll notice as Sander's looking through his deck here, there's no Mewtwo pieces.
Nope, no Mewtwo to be seen here, just a whole bunch of different control tools and probably some cards that some of you at home might be looking through and thinking, what on earth does that do?
Sure. Yeah, lots of random cards. That's one of my favorite things about watching Sander play and what deck he chooses to bring, what different cards he includes, because you're liable to see some cards that you wouldn't necessarily expect. We just saw that Pidgeot V in his deck just there. That is a card that came out in the Lost Origin expansion that allows you to shuffle it and all cards attached to it back into your deck. So that's one of the ways that he can never deck out. So let's break down exactly what Sander's overall strategy is. It's not taking prize cards. He's aiming to control the pace of the game, right?
Yeah, and controlling the pace of the game by using that Cry Destruction attack. As you mentioned, discards 3 special energies from your opponent's side of the field, which, when you're playing against a deck that plays all special energies and literally relies on getting as many out as quickly as possible, it's going to bode pretty well for you. And that's why he plays 4 copies of this card. It's going to be the main focus of control here. And in this matchup especially, it's going to be what he goes for straight away.
Prize mapping and energy placement is going to be extremely vital for Lucas Calzá because no energy is safe in play. It can be Cry of Destruction away. Sander even has a couple copies of Crushing Hammer in this list, and we see Flannery, one of these disruption cards, already discarding that special energy from the active Lumineon.
Yeah, and so especially so because, I mean, you asked earlier, oh, what does Lucas need to do differently in order to account for the fact that, you know, he's up against this control strategy. And I think one of the biggest things is going to be attaching literally just every single time only the amount of energy that's needed. Maybe even actually, we can already see that, oh, actually, that's really not ideal. Professor's research discarding 2 powerful colors energy. I mean, getting 2 Archeops in discard pile is great, but 2 powerful colors energy gone already, not so much.
We'll see how Lucas wants to operate this. Does he try to shuffle this Lumineon back in? That's one way you could try to keep your energy safe, of course. Now, this Evolution Instance being played can get the V-Star, so we could see those 2 Archeops come down into play.
Yes, and obviously it's very important to get those Archeopses out, and perhaps exactly like you said, going for this Lumineon strategy where you're attaching energy, doing the attacks and shuffling the energy back into the deck. That, of course, then protects the energies from being discarded by the Yveltal. So maybe he's going to just try and go for a strategy of using the Lumineon to attack over and over again to protect the energy.
So the prize mapping is going to be very important. You want to make sure every time you're putting energies in play that is leading to a prize card. And Sander does have something ready for this potential Lumineon loop. We already see on the bench he has gone out of his way to get that Miltank from Astral Radiance, that miraculous body ability, preventing all damage done to it by Pokemon V, so Lumineon will be unable to damage it, meaning at some point Lucas will have to go in with an Archeops or maybe one of these other attackers that he plays.
Yeah, and that's exactly the way Sander goes about building these decks, because he knows for a fact that if he just beelines too much on one strategy, there might be some way to play around it. But then he build something else in and factor in so that he has something else to play around the way their opponents would play around him, and the Miltank is coming in exactly to do just that and makes it so that Lucas can't just attack the Luminion all game.
So the main strategy from Sander will, well, as we see, 120 damage onto the Snorlax. It's not often that Snorlax gets to hang around.
No.
Usually it's going to be going down to an attack. But Sander's endgame, I think, is the interesting part of this deck. We saw at North American International Championships, he used a combination of Palpad, Silene, and Team Yell's Cheer to make sure he would never deck out, or has a very low chance to ever deck out. There is an opportunity that if you flip too many tails, you're running a little too low on resources, and we actually saw that happen in top 4 of the North American International Championships. But this version of the deck, there's no Team Yell's Cheer. We've still got the Silene and the Palpad in here, of course, as great options, but the way that you make sure you're always putting cards back into your deck is during the mid-game, early game, Sander's going to be trying to set up and then also get rid of all energies on Lucas's side of the field. And once Sander is sure that there are very few, if not no, energy left in Lucas' deck, what we'll see Sander do is transition into using Eldegoss. Using that, putting it onto the bench, grabbing Bird Keeper from the discard pile, switching into it, attach double turbo, float up, do 30 damage, and shuffle it back into the deck. And that's the loop he's aiming to get to in the end game.
Yeah, this is the off-house Eldegoss loop, right? We don't see it very often. It's not a strategy that's often employed, but Sander's deck is exactly built around it in the end game. And this is how, when he gets to that point where all the energies are gone, you just float up over and over again. And it doesn't matter that you're not doing that much damage. Eventually, you'll do enough to KO things,
yep.
And you'll eventually take all your prizes and win.
Yep, it doesn't matter how much damage you're doing when your opponent isn't able to attack. If there's no energy cards remaining, and that's really what Sander, in this matchup at least specifically, is going to aim to do. Get rid of all these energy cards through a combination of the Crushing Hammers, the Cry of Destruction, and then also things like the Flannery and the Sydney that he plays as well.
Well, importantly, it's a double factor, right? Yeah, not being able to attack, but also making sure that you can never run out of cards in your deck, whilst your opponent can as well, because, of course, that's the other condition for the control decks to win.
Yep. Can either take all prizes by just chipping away with the 30, or, yes, deck out is always kind of the main strategy, I feel like, of this deck. But players like Lucas are very strong and have definitely played against these type of decks in the past and certainly have strategies going in and will try to adjust. So I expect Lucas to manage his resources as closely as possible to try to limit the deck out potential. So my prediction is that it will come down to the float up, taking most of the prizes, if not all of them, if Lucas doesn't choose to concede earlier. And already, Sander is getting very nicely set up. We see thinning the hand down, and this is just what he wants to do. He wants to get through the deck. That's the main goal, is to try to get to as few cards in deck as possible so that every single turn you have has access to as many resources as you possibly can.
Yeah, and he has plenty of time to do so, right? That's the thing right now. There's no energy currently on Lucas' side of the field, so Sander doesn't need to pivot into the Yveltal and start doing Cry of Destruction yet. He has plenty of time to just focus on the setup instead, as we see the Yellhorn.
Yeah, very good card. Yeah, very strong, especially against this Lugia deck, which does not play very many switch cards.
No,
right?
no, absolutely, and sort of leaving both active Pokemon now confused. And yeah, like I said, with no switch outs, not really many ways for Lucas to get around this other than retreating, which is then more energy discard that Sander doesn't even have to work for.
Looks like we may be seeing a float up already, as we do see the Forest Seal Stone, a new card from the Silver Tempest expansion, able to be played onto this Eldegoss, gives it a V-Star power. And now Sander will go with the float up here, not so much as to, starts to put a little damage in play. Obviously, this Luminion can go back into the deck, but he's just trying to get things reset. That Yellhorn really does put on a lot of pressure and makes things a little awkward for Lucas.
It does, and also quite nicely now, what Sander can, of course, do is use the float up, it'll go back to the deck, and that means Sander's free to promote that Miltank and start walling against this Luminion.
So now Lucas has a tough choice. Do you commit an energy to retreat this Luminion and then charge up 3 energy onto your Archeops in order to attack into this? You also need multiple powerful colorless energy as well because of that Cape of Toughness that's on the Miltank, boosting its HP by 50.
And that's not even an option, right? Because we saw very early on, Lucas had to Professor's Research away 2 powerful colorless energy.
Oh, yeah, not even enough left, is there?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's actually not, KOing is not even an option this turn, which is very bad news for Lucas.
So it's going to have to be a 2-hit KO into this Miltank, which that is a bad, bad place to be already, and we're so early into this game still.
Yeah, so Lucas already in very, very bad shape, having lost so many powerful colorless energies. This Miltank putting in so much work without even having to do anything, and Lucas just left to wonder, I mean, how can he even come back from here? He knows what he needs to do, but he kind of can't really do it right now.
We will see Luminion grab the Marnie. This is a decent strategy against this deck. You want to try to disrupt as much as possible. So we definitely need to try to talk for a minute about what are Lucas's opportunities to come back in this game. Because on paper, Sander has obviously built his deck for this matchup. He is prepared for the Lugia deck. So just because you have preparations and you have a plan doesn't mean it's always going to come to fruition. So what are the things Lucas really wants to focus on moving forward in this game? It's a little awkward here with how many things have been discarded, but what are some of the plays he can try to make?
Well, I mean, he can still try and, loop with the minion, right? Sure, he won't do any damage to the mill tank, but at the very least, he'll keep cards in the deck, he'll keep his energy safe.
Gets rid of the confusion as well.
Gets rid of confusion, yeah, exactly. Although you would have to hope he flip the heads. But it does look actually, Lucas just decided to pass in this instance.
Very interesting to see Chorus experiment in this deck. It's not a Lost Zone engine at all.
Nope.
We see this from the Arceus Duraludon, which we featured on stream yesterday as well. Sometimes decks just want to see more cards, and that's what Chorus experiment allows you to do.
Also interesting to know, we see that the pitch at V already going to the Lost Zone was sort of, without even so much of the second form, maybe perhaps like not valuing as much the guaranteed put card back into the deck because of the factor that it gives you in this matchup.
It's maybe one of the things that it matters if you've prized a lot of unfortunate things. And this deck is a little susceptible to prizing now. It does play Peonia, it also plays Hisuian Heavy Ball, so there are plenty of options to combat the prizing mechanic, which otherwise could be pretty detrimental to a deck like this.
Yeah, indeed, but there's only so much accounting for you can do, right? Because that's, even with all of those, you might not necessarily hit the right things off the Peonia. Maybe your Hisuian Heavy Ball doesn't get exactly what you need, so it's not always easy.
Not at all. With this mill tank in the active, I think Sander is okay to just kind of take it slow here, take an opportunity to just play the cards in his hand. It would love to Gormandize, but I don't know that you want to commit a scoop up net to the active mill tank in order to move it to the bench. You obviously can't attach and retreat because the Galar Mine is in play, so it will just be the pass. Kind of wait and see what Lucas does.
Yes. And of course, with that Galar Mine in play, it does kind of make a retreating into Arceus attacking strategy kind of a lot less viable, regardless. Lucas will need to find some kind of way to get rid of the stadium first.
And Lucas already, as this deck search is happening, is pulling up to the front the counter stadiums here. Pulled up the 2 collapsed stadium and also the 1 lost vacuum, because those are cards that he'd really like to find, wants to make sure that they're in the deck and that they're not prized.
Yes, indeed. But maybe then for now, yeah, maybe it's worth at this point just going for the risk. You do Primal Turbo, power up this Luminion and hope you flip heads and you're able to get the Luminion back into the deck. But we do see a Primate Wisdom first. And does he find Count Stadium? No, I don't see it.
The Oranguru is pretty interesting because it's a way you could potentially play around the Sydney that Sander plays. Sydney is a supporter card that lets you look at your opponent's hand and then you discard 2 in any combination of Special Energy, Stadium, and Tool cards. So that's something that Lucas could consider if he thinks that a potential Sydney is incoming.
Yeah, absolutely. And then from Sander's side, actually, we do see the Peonia being played. So no Sydney this turn at least, but now, as we talked about earlier, able to fish out some of those key pieces out the prizes, and then going to put the rest back in. It'd be very good to see what exactly is back in the prizes now. Maybe get some idea of like what was taken.
We got a quick little flash of that Ice Cube. It's not a card that'll be relevant at all in this matchup, but so funny to see it being played here. Sander actually playing 1 Ice Cube and 1 Wash Energy. Not for this matchup, like I mentioned, but it would be really strong into the meta, potentially against decks like Regigigas and also the Lost Box decks, because with Wash Energy on the Ice Cube, it actually can't be damaged by something like a Sableye.
Yeah, exactly. It covers all of your, because all your basics, right? It covers all the basic attacking decks like Lost Box, like Reggie's, and then just for the extra protection against the Sableye, Wash Energy, just prevents all effective attacks. So it's like a 1-card answer to a lot of that, which is pretty good.
Absolutely. Looks like Sander has kind of a clunky hand, a decent amount of energy in it, so not the best, but if your opponent isn't really finding a way to deal with this mill tank, I think Sander's kind of okay with the pace of where things are going, because eventually he'll draw into the pieces he needs, right?
Yeah, clunky hand doesn't matter so much if you're walling with something that your opponent can't really attack or deal with right now, and especially given the Galar Mine still in play and there's so many powerful colors energy's gone, I think Sander's just happy to sit pretty on this Cape of Toughness mill tank.
Absolutely. Now Lucas could try to power up this Luminion and swing in to the mill tank just to try to shuffle it in, like we mentioned. Would revolve around hitting a heads on confusion, though. When you're confused in the Pokemon TCG, you have to flip a coin in order to attack. If you flip heads, your attack works normally. But if you flip tails, that attack fails and you take 30 damage. And I wonder if Lucas is just thinking flipping a tails here would be way too detrimental.
I think that might be exactly it, because of course, if the tails does get flipped, all Sander needs to do at that point is retreat the mill tank into the Yveltal and discard a bunch of energy, and Lucas essentially wasted energy for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So waiting for a little bit more. I don't think Lucas is playing any switching cards. We don't really see them too often in these Lugia decks. Sometimes we've seen people play a Bird Keeper. Sometimes we've seen Sharon's Care, which obviously in this instance wouldn't help with the Luminion. And yeah, looking through the list, there's no option. It's going to have to be a manual retreat or an attack.
Oh boy. And Sander probably as we talked about earlier, built his deck in this exact way, knowing that these are exactly the sorts of weaknesses that his controller archetype could prey on, and we're seeing it play out in front of us right now.
Yeah, this is probably the premier matchup for Sander to be able to play against. If we want to see what his deck was meant to do, this is going to be the matchup to feature it. And Lucas, I mean, I wonder if you ever think about, is it ever a consideration to concede a game where you've already discarded too many energy cards, try to steal a quick game 2 and maybe force a tie in an unfavorable matchup? Or does Lucas, you don't want to do that too early, obviously, and I don't think it is too late for Lucas to potentially find a way, but it's getting close, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got to be a consideration, right? Because you know for a fact that your opponent can't win quickly, but you can, so maybe you can steal like a quick donk in game 2 or something like that, and like you said, squeak his high out from a defeat, and it's definitely got to be something that's going through Lucas's mind right now.
Something that players may always consider if their deck is just really weak against a control archetype like Sanders is that they don't really hope to win. Like, obviously everyone hopes to win, but being more realistic, understanding if these decks both set up, my deck just doesn't have the utility in order to deal with what Sander has. So maybe I can just try to get 1 match point out of this round with a tie, play out this long game 1, let Sander do his strategy, let him show off, do what his deck is meant to do, and then maybe try to steal a quick game 2.
I mean, you wouldn't want to take away his fun, wouldn't you? That would just be mean.
As we do see a double heads there on Silene. Very nice, and 2 cards being grabbed right away. The Pal Pad and the Team Yellhorn. Putting those back into the deck. They get put back on top.
Yep, very important to get those 2 back off Yellhorn. We saw how devastating that has been even already for Lucas, right? Just not being able to attack with this Luminion at all. But Lucas turn after turn just doing Primate Wisdom over and over again, just passing. This really isn't where you want to be.
Not in the slightest. Now, Sander has a pretty large hand. This game has gone on for a little bit longer now, so he's had plenty of opportunities. We know that Pal Pad is in hand, but that the Yellhorn is the next card to be drawn for turn. So Sander may not want to play Pal Pad yet, hold off for a turn, draw the Yellhorn, and then Pal Pad back something like this Silene.
Something that could be a consideration for Lucas actually this time, because he's doing Primate Wisdom over and over and just passing. Maybe it'd be better to, after Primate Wisdom, do a Primal Turbo just to shuffle the deck again.
Sure.
And that way every turn you're seeing 2 new cards instead of 1.
And also, if he's trying to not draw into energy, which might be something he's doing because he doesn't want to be Sydneyed, have those energies just discarded from the hand, that's another reason to shuffle the deck, right? Because then you're not going to top deck it again next turn.
Yeah, because of course it's important to remember Primal Turbo, it's something that searches the deck, and the deck is private knowledge, so you don't have to get something from it. If even if you have energies in the deck, you can just opt to not get anything, and then it's just a free deck shuffle.
So looking at Sanders' deck list, there is just a obscene amount of one-of individual cards, and that's why we see cards like Peonia be so vital, which he just played on this last turn, and probably grabbing out this Sydney.
Yeah, there it is, Sydney. Exactly as you mentioned, this is exactly what Lucas did not want to face, and there's going to be a lot of special energies in the discard pile. Yep, 2 double turbos gone.
Oh, that's gross.
Absolutely gross. And of course, Sanders just going to Pal Pad it back in and do it again.
Yeah, get that and the Silene. Silene always goes back into the deck with Pal Pad. And we talked about Sanders' strategy from NAIC, which focused around using Team Yell's Cheer and using the Silene and using the Pal Pad and using multiple copies of all of those cards. Things are a little bit different now. We've only got 1 Pal Pad and 1 Silene in this deck.
Yeah, but I mean, clearly that's all he needs, right?
Sure.
You know, just to be able to loop those over and over again, just Sydney for days and just wait until your opponent runs out of energy. I mean, it seems as good a strategy as any.
And all Lucas can do is pass. Man, this is just, the longer this game goes, the longer this setup has gone on, the more and more in favor of Sander this is.
Yeah, and Lucas still not going for that strategy of just using Primal Turbo for nothing to shuffle the deck. Maybe perhaps not thinking that could be an option, maybe. I mean, in the heat of the moment, it can be easy to forget that these options are available to you. Or maybe thinking that he'd rather just control the top of his deck and know exactly what it is. It's hard to say. Obviously, Lucas is working with more knowledge than we are. Maybe he knows something about the strategy of this matchup that we don't.
I also wonder if at some point you just have to go for the Luminion flip, or maybe, I think Lucas has now drawn into a Lost Vacuum, so might be considering getting rid of this Galar Mine?
Yes, possibly. I mean, he hasn't done it yet, so but
nope, just a pass.
But whenever he's ready for it, I'm sure that he probably will go for it. See another Primate Wisdom, V-Guard energy going back on top of the deck, and but drawing a powerful colorless energy.
Not ideal.
No.
Though we know that the Sydney is hidden somewhere in the deck, there's a chance Sander could draw it. But it is just a single one-of copy, so does not have access to it. So Lucas energies are safe for now.
Yeah, and this is slowly becoming the draw pass trading card game. Oh, there is Lost Vacuum in hand.
Yeah, the Lost Vacuum's there in hand. And something I just noticed, the energy that Lucas has been putting back on top every single turn is the V-Guard energy, which does reduce the damage that the Eldegoss does to 0. So maybe that's what he's thinking, wants to hold on to that specific energy so that the damage doesn't get placed on these Pokemon. But the main problem with that is you still have to be attacking, right? You still have to find ways to keep your energies in play and attack. And of course, Sander, once that V-Guard energy comes down, could just use Flannery or Crushing Hammer to get rid of it.
And interesting enough, exactly as you said that, Lucas decided to change pace and actually keep the V-Guard energy in hand instead of putting it back. And so that's, yeah, it's a very, very tough position to be in.
Sander was just waiting to draw this Sydney.
Not going to waste any time getting rid of that V-Guard energy, I'm sure. Maybe looking at the Heat Fire energy as well.
I think Choice Belt's a good discard. Why not, right?
Yeah.
Of course. Definitely those energies are the most important resource to get rid of from your opponent.
More Primary Wisdom's another pass. Lucas is really just, he's almost just like, waiting for it. He just wants to end my suffering, you know what I mean? It's just there's nothing more for Lucas to do at this point, it does seem. Oh.
Now that is a double tails on the Silene, which is relevant. There, I do think, actually no, the Palpad is in the discard pile, so it will have to be an Eldegoss in order to use that Happy Match ability to get back Silene to try to use it again.
Yeah, which Sander doesn't need to do. So, okay, maybe if another double tails happens here.
Well, I actually grabbed, I think, the Bird Keeper. Yeah, it's loop time. We're going in with the Happy Match, drawing these 3 cards. We're getting down to 0 cards in deck, 30 damage, boom, pop this Eldegoss back in, send up the Miltank, and this is the loop. With the Pyukumuku that Sander also assumedly has in hand. Well, we haven't seen it yet. Maybe, is that, and actually the Pyukumuku is there in the Lost Zone. That's actually kind of interesting. So that's the way that Sander can do it every single turn, is by drawing, if you draw double Turbo Energy, you can Pyukumuku for the Eldegoss, go get it, and, cycle your loop, right? Yeah. Keep putting the Eldegoss back into the deck turn after turn. Without it, he's going to have to wait until he draws into the actual Eldegoss itself or Quick Balls for it. But we do see Lucas with a play here.
Yeah, we see now Lucas firing off that Lost Vacuum, plays the Marnie, and maybe just at this point being patient and thinking now's the best time to disrupt Sander's hand and try and mount some kind of response.
Let's see what the move is here. Does have an energy in hand. So we will see Primal Turbo. Okay, how many energies are remaining in the deck? Looks like a Capture, a powerful Colorless, Heat, Fire, Aurora. There's still a decent amount, okay.
Definitely enough to do an attack at least, although committing to the bench Luminion.
So this might mean there's a retreat coming. There was an energy drawn for turn in the hand.
Yes, there was, and not wanting to risk a flip on Confusion, understandably. It's too. You'd rather just guarantee lose 1 energy than have a chance at losing 3. So I think it's absolutely fair enough for Lucas to do this, and now with the retreat we'll be able to guarantee attacking and put an energy back. But again, no damage to the Miltank.
So Sander will now want to find that Yellhorn once again if he can. That's definitely going to be a big important piece here. Does have Eldegoss in hand, so could go for the Bird Keeper, try to draw a few cards. Let's see if that's the strat. Yep.
Yeah, let's go for it, Bird Keeper.
Sends this up. We already know the double turbo is in hand as well.
Does draw Hisuian Heavy Ball. It has a double turbo ready, and now just goes for the float up again.
Okay, so this is an opening here for Lucas. Now, obviously, this Miltank is becoming an issue. Too many powerful colors. That you just have to think this game could look different if 2 powerful colorless energy did not hit the discard pile right away.
Yeah, that first Professor's Research was absolutely huge for Lucas, and I'm sure in any other situation he really would not want to do that, but he didn't really have a choice in terms of actually having to do that to set up the rest of his field.
We will see Ultra Ball does fetch Luminion, and Boss's Orders being eyed up could target down the Radiant Gardevoir there on the bench, or that Yveltal with the Lucky Egg on it. Those both can be KO'd by the Aqua Return.
Yeah, it sure can. Lucky Egg would, of course, result in Sander being able to draw some more cards and maybe find some more outs, but maybe that's just what you have to go for right now.
Maybe you more value just getting rid of the Yveltal. No, it will be the Gardevoir being KO'd. Okay. And this actually is relevant, too. Actually, the Gardevoir does protect all of your Pokemon, right? Not just your own V Pokemon.
Yeah, that's correct.
So Luminion couldn't actually have KO'd the Yveltal. So that is why we have to go after the Gardevoir first.
Yeah, and of course with the Gardevoir's built-in protection, not even the Luminion can KO the Gardevoir, right?
It protects itself. Oh my goodness.
Yes. So, although even it didn't have 130 HP, so it would have been 10 short regardless. But but either way, going to have to be a 2-hit KO on this Radiant Gardevoir, and if Sander can just retreat it, then Lucas is going to have to find another Boss's Orders.
And we're seeing Sander just going back to his same old ways, and now that damage is on the bench. Everything Lucas worked so hard for, the Boss's Orders play, doesn't have access to it anymore.
Yeah, wow. And Lucas doing as much as he can, trying to find the pieces to counter Xander's, insane control strategy. But really, no matter what he does, it just doesn't seem like it's ever quite enough. And I have a feeling that it won't be too much longer before Lucas runs out of cards before he can manage to take all 6 of his prizes.
See that Sydney already in hand. Will just be... Ooh, we're actually going in with the route on the Miltank.
Oh.
Miltank, of course, does have a decent little attack. 20 damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon, plus the 10 base, of course, as well. So we see that being stacked up here onto the Luminion.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, if you can't access the float up, why not just attack with Miltank, right? That's the thing you were going to promote afterwards anyway, so why not start taking some prizes? But with that second boss.
Okay, we're getting rid of the Gardevoir here. But will this be enough? It does put all this damage back into the deck and also these energy cards back into the deck. All right, Lucas is trying to find something to do. Does take the first prize card of the match.
After 25 minutes of play.
Here we are. And I think Sanders still okay with this situation. I think would like to find the Yell Horn probably at some point. But honestly, without those... With the Lost Vacuum already being gone and without those powerful colorless energies, Archeops just is not going to be able to deal with this Miltank. And that's the only thing that Lucas plays right now that we see that can attack into it.
And especially so now you see the Galar Mine coming down.
Yeah.
And yeah, Lucas, I think, actually discarded one or if not both of the Collapse Stadiums earlier as well. So this Galar Mine is pretty much staying for the rest of the game.
The Radiant Charizard, I believe, did get discarded. The Eviltal was prized. That would be another way that Lucas could attack into this Miltank. We will see the Aqua Return does put the Luminium back in, but thanks to that Miracle Body, no damage onto Miltank.
No, just to shuffle things back in. And I mean, one actually thing that does help a lot with Lucas doing these constant Aqua Returns, the bench size is now lower, so that means that Miltank is now doing less damage with Route, but here comes the Yell Horn. Sander has to join into it again.
And if you can combo this with the Bird Keeper, which we do see in hand, that would be nice. I don't think there is the Eldegoss or an out to it, though, so...
No, so
just to draw on a pass.
Yeah, doesn't want to risk confusion. Pass, again, pass.
Yep, and this is something that Sander is probably very used to playing Control over the years, is just that motion of pass, pass, back and forth. Because that's something that happens probably in most games where you get to a situation, at least for a few turns, where players are just passing back and forth, waiting to draw into pieces.
Yeah, and it looks like I was slightly mistaken. I do see actually there is a Collapse Stadium in Lucas's hand, so he does have the counter if he wanted to make use of it this turn. And but it does look like...
Ultra Ball being played first, discarding a couple of supporters. Now, if Lucas does hold on to the stadium, it is interesting to note that it would be susceptible to the potential Sydney that Sander does play, and I already see it there in his hand. Sydney does not only discard special energy from your opponent's hand, but can also target tools and stadium cards, of course.
Yeah, very versatile control card for that exact reason. Of course...
let's see if he slams it. Did draw into the Eldegoss, so we may see the Bird Keeper this turn.
Yeah, maybe just wants to guarantee the damage with the float up instead and just reset that confusion, of course, on the Miltank. And yeah, that is what he's going to go for. So Bird Keeper, switch, 3 cards drawn, literally the last 3 cards of the deck.
Is exactly what Xander wants as well, though. 0 cards in deck, so that the only 2 remaining are the Eldegoss V and the double Turbo Energy, and just slowly start to chip away.
Slowly but surely does it, and another Primate Wisdom from Lucas as... He does have an orange in hand. Still does have the Collapse Stadium, but not opting to play it just yet. Maybe thinking that this isn't really the turn to do so. If you're just, if you're not really willing to attack with Archeops anyway, then it kind of doesn't really matter so much, I guess. But it's, or rather, not willing to retreat it.
Does use that Luminion with the Luminous Sign. I don't think there's even a supporter remaining in the deck.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, at that point, then you're literally just doing it to do Aqua Return over and over again. But that deck is looking very thin. Now does play the Collapse Stadium. Oh, and resetting that Lugia. Okay, getting rid of it.
Yep, not something that you can even attack with at this point. I don't even know if there are 4 energy cards left in the deck.
Absolutely not, there isn't.
Both Archeops can be used, though, to get 3 energy out of the deck.
Yep, there it is. 2 Auroras and Powerful Colorless, and then just going for the Aqua Return, shuffling back in.
So Lucas here is saying, okay, you don't deck out, but I also don't deck out. So Sander here will have to find a way to disrupt this, because at this moment, with the double Luminion, Lucas would not necessarily deck out, and I think that's probably why the Yell Horn specifically is in Sander's deck for that reason. Yeah,
that, and of course this Boss's Orders bringing out the Oranguru and now forcing a retreat from Lucas. We've talked so many times, relevant in other matchups, how Lugia doesn't have a lot of options in order to retreat or switch, and this is now going to be even, this in the control matchups specifically, it's going to hurt even more that you don't have the switch outs.
Eldegoss coming down, does grab Bird Keeper, can still switch even if you're not drawing any cards, throw that double turbo on, and just shuffle it back in. Pretty simple, straightforward turn. You can tell Sander is just trying to get through this thing, right? He just wants to play quickly, make sure that we don't see a Game 1 tie. That is something that theoretically could happen if time was to be called during Game 1 and neither player was winning or had a win condition satisfied.
Yep.
The game would just end in a tie.
And it looks like there's actually just about enough energy left in deck for Lucas to still be able to attack with Aqua Return, 2 onto the Oranguru and 1 onto the 2 onto the Luminion. Primate Wisdom one more time. But if Sander has one more boss's orders, this game is over now. Those 3 energies are literally the last ones left in Lucas's deck.
Yeah, this is Lucas's last option to try to keep the Aqua Return up, and has to promote an Archeops as well. Doesn't even have the second Luminion to send up.
No, and Silene there, 1 heads, but that's going to be more than enough. Just going to obviously get back that Pow Pad.
Yep, that's priority number 1 anytime you flip the Silene, I feel like. It's got to be Pow Pad.
Yes, because that's the one that can let you loop the Silene back and so keep it going over and over and over again. But now, yeah, what does Lucas do?
Looks like it was just a pass. There is Sydney. Does Sanders slam the Sydney down short enough? Let's take a look at that hand. There is the Aurora energy, and Lucas concedes the game, says that's my last energy to be able to attack with Luminion. I'm out of here.
Wow, and after 30 minutes to play, we see Sander pulling off, as always shown on stream, a masterclass in control, finding a way to take on the biggest deck in the format with his own kind of unique play style and showing it off on stream to his usual greatness.
I mean, that was a very, very Sander-sided match there.
You
can tell that this deck is very well prepared for the Lugia matchup and extremely strong into a field. I mean, I think I saw a statistic that we're close to 50%, if not at 50% of day 2 field being Lugia. So if half of your games in day 2 are going to be against this deck and you definitely have a very, very good matchup against it, you're probably going to find yourself in top cut.
I mean, we've seen it already, right? Sander did make top 4 at the last internationals that happened in North America.
Yep.
Can he just do it again? Looking at that match, you've got to think that, yes, he absolutely can.
He's definitely in a decent spot to make it happen. Now, the game is far from over, and Lucas is going to do everything he can to try to win this next game. If he does win this game, I think this match would most likely end in a tie. There's a chance that Lucas could get really lucky 2 games in a row. And what is Lucas's best strategy to try to win a game if you want it to be quick, especially if you're trying to win the set?
You hope Sander flips over 1 Pokemon, passes, and then you knock it out.
Yep, there we go. That would be a pretty good game for Lucas's side, without a doubt. I think trying to employ some early Marnies is definitely a good strategy as well, right? Try to disrupt Sander, keep him to a low hand size. The early game for control is really where the struggle is.
Yeah, exactly. Once you're in the early game, you're very, very shaky. You're trying to set up all your pieces to be able to control what your opponent has. But if you can get out of that early game, that's when you normally take control of the board state and you can just kind of dictate the pace of the game from there. Exactly like you said, if Lucas can find an early Marnie, kind of just disrupt that early setup from Sander, maybe that's how he finds this opportunity to, really capitalize on that early shakiness that the control decks usually have.
Prizes going out. We do see one of those 2 Luminion in the prizes there for Lucas. That is, I mean, we saw that be a really important part of the last game, being able to have both of those cards, the 2 fish, which is something that not too many players have brought, but a few from Europe did. We saw Stefan Ivanov on stream yesterday with the double fish. I think that's a group of the French players were definitely on that. Lucas here from Italy also playing the card.
Yes, so going to be very, very important here to see how this plays out. The Sander just like taking a mulligan just to begin with. That's going to be a little bit nice for Lucas to see maybe some extra cards to be able to do a good early setup. But especially with the Luminion being in the top card of the prizes as well, going to be very, very rough for him to do what was so effective in the first game, which was that looping between the 2 Luminions to sort of buy himself more time and sort of be able to fill up his deck with more cards. We do see it now. Sander drawing an open hand, does find a basic this time, so now let's have a look at the prizes for Sander's side.
It does matter, but then at the same time it doesn't, right?
No, it's
We've got access to the Heavy Ball, we've got access to the Peonia, and there's nothing too bad in here. I think Sander might play the Peonia at some point, try to get that Yell Horn out of the prize cards, especially if he has to maybe Lost Zone one off of a early Colress's Experiment.
Yeah, that's going to be on the mind for sure. But we are off here for Game 2 here in our feature match. Lucas will be going first, of course, and already starts off with a quick ball discarding an Archeops.
Pretty good way to kick the game off. The active Pokemon, though, not the... it does start the Lugia. I was looking at the other side. I saw a colorless Pokemon. I thought he started Dunsparce for a second. But Lugia, pretty decent. Definitely can start attacking with it. And honestly, maybe you can attack with Lugia's second attack, just go with the arrow dive early on, start taking prizes, and then that way if the yell horn comes out, you can just VMAX a V-Star to evolve, because if you put the V-Star in play, you run the risk of just getting confused and then having to flip or retreat.
Yeah, that's true. Although if you were to attack with the Lugia V without getting a Lugia V-Star out, you would have to attach 2 double turbos essentially, because of course Lugia V-Star is what enables that Archeops to come out to be able to
or have a Lugia on the bench.
Yeah,
right?
okay, yeah, that could work. Yeah, so and maybe that's actually what Lucas would go for here, just attaching capture energy. And oh no, actually just opting to shuffle the deck after the capture energy.
Yeah, will just be a fail of the capture energy.
Interestingly enough, so
does have another Lugia in hand, but may just choose not to bench it. Let's see. There's plenty of strategies that Lucas could try to go with, and we are over onto Sanders' turn now with that trekking shoes. Letting you look at the first card of your deck. You can choose to either put it into your hand or discard it. And if you discard it, you get the second card and put it into your hand.
Yeah, and looks like there was a Bruno that was drawn after discarding a twin energy. There's a double turbo in hand as well, a couple of other things. It looks to be a quick ball. And this is when the start of Sander setup is really going to get going. Of course, quick ball, thinning more cards out of the hand so you can draw more Gorman dies as well.
And Sander already has the Mill Tank in hand. Doesn't even have to quick ball for it. That's a super important card for him in this matchup potentially. I did watch one of Sanders' games in the last round, actually, and he played against a different Lugia player. It also went very well for him, as we see here with his 9-1-1 record. He did defeat the other Lugia player, and he actually didn't even use Miltank in that matchup. Didn't even need to at any given time. So it's interesting that depending on the situation, depending maybe on the opponent's list, you can choose to use some of these cards and maybe choose to not use them if you don't feel like they're good for the situation.
And then, of course, that's exactly how you play Control, right? You have all these different tech cards. You don't use all of them in every matchup, but they're all in there because in different matchups, they'll be the vital piece that lets you win. So, and Sander, I'm sure, would have gone through the whole meta game in his head when he was building his list and thinking, what could I need to play to account for this, 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 and this? And that's how he would have come up with his 60 cards.
The main thing I'm hoping here for Lucas is that he's able to have one of the 2 copies of Marnie in this opening hand, or potentially the Luminion to fetch it out and try to just disrupt the incoming Gormandize that we expect to see. Sander will prep for this with the Yveltal, so even if the Lugia does KO the Snorlax, Yveltal can send up with that Cry of Destruction, discard 3 of the special energy attached to a Lugia. Yeah,
which would also be pretty ideal for Sander. Down goes the Yveltal, and there's a Miltank mention. Oh, actually, 2 Yveltals go down.
It's just all coming down here. Wow. And we're drawing more cards with the Gormandize. What a great turn 1.
That's we talk about shaky early setups. Looks like Sander doesn't really have to worry about that at this time at all.
That is the one worry you have as a control player, and Sander's just not even worried about it at all.
No, so V-Guard energy plus Marnie for Lucas then. Again, we did mention
this is what he needs to do, yes.
This is exactly it. So now with early Marnie, maybe he can disrupt Sander enough and start taking some prizes and really start taking control of the game this way. But like Sander really needs to miss right now.
Yeah, he needs Sander to miss, and he also needs to find a Lugia V-Star, have at least, there is one Archeops down. I think would like to get rid of another one. Oh, and I don't see, this hand is terrible from Lucas. It looks like a couple energy, a Lugia V, a Stadium, and the Radiant Charizard.
That is absolutely atrocious.
Read the wind for 3. Oh, the next card, of course, Lugia V-Star. One card off.
Always the way, but yeah, God, that is really not what you want to see. I mean, I guess next turn, if there's a double turbo in hand, Lucas could just evolve, attach, and attack, but I don't even actually see a double turbo in hand.
And Sander is fine to just take this opportunity to go into this Yveltal, draw 3 cards with the Bird Keeper. Sure, maybe this hand will be too big to have even used Gormandize anyway. And use Cry of Destruction. Get rid of 2 of those special energy. Make it as hard as possible for Lucas to attack. I think that anytime there are more than 1 energy cards in play, or even just 1 single energy card in play, Sander's main goal that turn is to get rid of it.
Yeah, and this is, again, why this is the main focus of this archetype. It's funny, because we actually didn't see Yveltal being used too much in the last game, mainly because it ended up being not necessary.
I don't think it attacked.
No, but in this situation,
yep.
Look at the devastation.
Yes. Absolutely destroys those energies on the active Lugia. Now, Lucas was able to find the Lugia V-Star. We could see that evolution come into play. The Collapse Stadium is interesting. Will force Sander to discard a bench Pokemon. Does choose to lose the Snorlax.
I mean, yeah, there's another one out, so it's not the end of the world in terms of that. That might even be why Sander chose to bench the second Snorlax, just so that it was an easy discard fodder in case of a collapsed.
And now Capture Energy coming down, allowing Lucas to search the deck for a basic Pokemon, put it onto the bench. What could Lucas eye up here? Looks like a Ringaroo will be the choice.
Maybe just trying to dig for something to get an Archeops into the discard pile, because I don't believe there's any in there currently.
I think one. I think there is one.
There's one,
yes.
okay.
I think,
yes,
remember,
quick
balled on turn 1. But
yes.
I think, yeah, definitely would love to get 2 down if you can. It's not the end of the world if you don't, though. Research is the draw, but can you afford to get rid of a powerful colorless energy is the question.
I think maybe because it's only 1 this time, it's okay. Like, because it was.
Oh, is that a Stadium getting discarded as well, though?
Oh, quite possibly. Yeah. That's less good.
Two of those important pieces. We saw, how important Galar Mine was for Sander, and now Lucas's only other stadium bump option would be the Lost Vacuum, and I feel like Lost Vacuum would be such a good play onto the Cape of Toughness on the Mill Tank.
Yeah, so it's something you want to save for the tool if possible. Maybe that's just not really on the cards for this game, though. We do see, though, the V-Star power coming in, Summoning Star now be able to get out both the Archeops.
Yes.
Primal Turbo is now coming into full force, and we will see a KO on this Yveltal's turn at the very least.
All right, Lucas is going a little bit more aggressive this game than what we saw in game number 1, hoping that he's been able to slow Sander down just a little bit. Did play the Bird Keeper last turn, so there's a few more cards in hand. There's an Yveltal on the bench already, but there is not an energy card on it just yet.
No, there's not. So he's going to be up to Lucas to decide what kind of mix of energies to accept with Primal Turbo. Does decide to put on the Heat Fire energy, of course, not really going to be attacking Radiant Charizard this game, I think.
Yeah, I don't think Sander's going to be taking enough prizes for you to activate that Excited Heart ability on the Radiant Charizard.
Or at least, if he's taking that many prizes, you're already at a state where you've lost regardless, because you'll be getting...
for sure.
You've
been Eldegoss looped.
Like, that 1,000 times.
So Yveltal goes down, Lucas takes a prize, Snorlax coming into the active spot. Does have that wash energy on it. Kind of funny to see it put there, but it does make sense because if you ever wanted to retreat the Snorlax, now you could just attach a double turbo to do it.
Yeah, it sure can. Trekking Shoes does discard a scoop up net.
Now that Pukumuku will get pitched, sent to the bottom of the deck. Now one more card being drawn.
And maybe this time Sander will hope to be able to not lost zone it like in the last game, of course, being able to guarantee that you can draw the 2 pieces of that Eldegoss loop every single time. But, oh, there's a Sydney, though.
Could be big. Let's see what's in this hand. Ooh, I see a couple energy cards.
Oh.
Plenty of choices. Aurora and Double Turbo, 2 of the strongest energy that Lucas plays in the deck, going to the discard pile.
Absolutely devastating, and I'm sure that's the last card that Lucas would have wanted to see on this turn, losing 2 more energies and 2 more ways to, have that flexibility to attack with the Luminion V as well.
Yeah, Sander did gain more information there, seeing in Lucas's hand both the Boss's Orders and Luminion, 2 potentially key cards.
Yes, doesn't quite know that that Lucas has the second one prized yet. I'm sure Lucas probably is aware of the fact that the second one is prized by this point and will play accordingly. But actually, interesting. Oh, Quick Ball discarding the Eldegoss here.
That is very peculiar. Eldegoss is extremely important for this deck. We saw how it is the main loop strategy, but maybe Sander feels like he's discarded enough energy, and with Lucas going for this Lugia strategy, feels like, hey, I've just got enough Yveltal to close this one out. Of course, you always have the backup plan of Silene to get back the Eldegoss, I guess, right?
Yeah, I guess so. So maybe Sander thinking that that's sort of enough of a backup in case when the Eldegoss needed to just go for this Quick Ball now. But agreed, it does seem a little bit strange, especially considering Eldegoss, there's only 1 copy in the deck, isn't there?
1 single copy of Eldegoss, yes. This is a very quote-unquote greedy list. So many one-ofs, everything is an individual, but everything that he only needs 1 copy of, he's only choosing to play 1 copy of because he can theoretically search them out of the prize cards if they were there with the Peonia and the Hisuian Heavy Ball.
So once again, here comes the Luminion. Luminous Sign grabs that Marnie again, just trying to keep up that chain of disruption and make it so that Sander just misses 1 turn of control. Prime Wisdom also being used to guarantee a card on top of the deck after the Marnie, and then the Marnie goes down.
Okay, yep, this is really good for Lucas, actually, and Sander was unable to disrupt this Lugia. Still going to remain with 4 energies on it. This is what Lucas needs to do. If he wants to win a game here in this unfavorable matchup, it's going to be behind Marnie. It's going to be by spamming this card over and over again. This was the second copy, so I think the 2 turns of spamming Marnie are done now, but now hoping that this was enough to slow Sander down so that maybe Lucas can find the last 4 prizes.
Yeah, maybe, and now it's going to go up to Sander. Can he find a double turbo or a twin energy to use Cryo Destruction and get rid of all Lucas's energy? It's going to be absolutely vital for him to find it this turn.
He does play a ton of them, 4 double turbos and 3 twin energies in this deck, and sure enough, twin energy coming down, and the lucky egg as well to try and draw even more cards. Galar Mine for just a little bit more added insult to injury. Now Sander choosing which 3 energies to discard. I think the main one that matters is getting rid of the powerful colorless, I guess. Everything else is kind of inconsequential.
Yeah, so very, very unfortunate for Lucas, doing the right strategy and trying to disrupt Sander with the Marnies, but Sander still finding exactly what he needs every single turn to keep putting the pressure and the hurt on Lucas's energy count.
There's still a good amount of energy remaining in the deck. 1 single Archeops Primal Turbo can get out a double turbo and another energy so that you can knock out this Yveltal. Or you could load up even more extra energies, hold off on the double turbo, I suppose, until potentially Sander does not have an out to the energies for the Yveltal.
Yeah, your double turbo is absolutely crucial. You probably want to use those at the last possible moment that you can. Primate Wisdom, putting another card back on top of the deck, and maybe it is interesting because obviously last time we saw that the powerful colorless energies were absolutely vital in terms of making the Archeops able to KO the Miltank. But it seems like in this game, Lucas is saying, you know what, I'm not even thinking about Miltank this game because there's more of a back and forth going on with the energy discards with the Yveltal instead.
And Lucas has not had to use that Lost Vacuum yet as
No.
well. So that is really important because that means that you can KO the Miltank by getting rid of that Cape of Toughness. We will see the Lucky Egg proc whenever your active Pokemon that has this tool attached is KO'd. You get to draw up to 7 cards. And interesting enough, Sander gets to see those 7 cards before he has to promote a Pokemon.
Yeah, although it does seem like you just wanted to promote the Yveltal straight away regardless.
Seems fair.
Now,
And sending up the Yveltal definitely makes me think there is almost certainly an energy in the hand. I think maybe you would send up the Miltank if you didn't see an energy off of the Lucky Egg, right?
You would have thought so, right? So Trekking Shoes actually does decide to just keep whatever that is.
Must have been a really important resource. I do see a few energy there in hand already, so
More than
Sander
one.
will have plenty of options. Could be a decent Peonia turn. Try to find that Yellhorn. We talked about that earlier being prized. Maybe he wants to fish it out.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can see his prizes and see what he takes.
So yeah, does grab 3 of the prizes. Do we see the Yellhorn? Ooh, well, we can't really get a good look, unfortunately. But I'm sure we'll probably see it in the hand and see it get slammed down if it does get played.
Yeah, debating what 3 cards to put back. It's actually funny. So I was talking earlier how I watched Sanders' last round game play out. I watched him Peonia in a turn, and I think there must have been something prized that he wanted. But of the 3 cards he took, none of the cards he saw were necessary cards. So he just put all 3 of the same cards back that he saw off the Peonia. So funny how that works sometimes.
I guess it turns Peonia into half of an Alpha lithograph for.
Sure.
You remember that card?
Yep, that is a throwback for sure. I have that card in my cube, and every single time someone sees that card in their pack, they say, what does this card do? Because it's spelled out in the unknown letters, right?
Yes, exactly. For those who don't know, it just says, look at your face down prize cards.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. Now, Quick Ball will discard the Sharon's Care. Interesting card inclusion in this deck. Now, with the Cape of Toughness and the multiple colorless Pokemon that Sander does play, I could see this being strong. You can also, of course, pick up the Miltank if it was in danger of being 2-hit KO'd, so that seems like a good play for it. It can also pick up things like the Greedent V and the Pidgeot V that Sander plays as well.
Yes, he could. But, I mean, the time is running very, very short, though. Lucas needs
3 minutes.
3 minutes to take 3 prizes. I'm not so confident, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, especially because we know Sander already has the energy in hand. Now, if Lucas had another disruption card, maybe there could be a chance, because Sander does have a pretty large hand size here, but just 2 copies of Marnie. There's no other ways to get that back. No Eldegoss of his own. There's no Roxanne, obviously, which wouldn't be able to be played anyway. There's no Pal Pad, so 3 energies going down.
So that's it. Basically, Lucas has no other way to stop Sander's hand, and we know there's another Twin Energy or Double Turbo in hand regardless, so there's going to be another Primal Turbo, another KO, but then there's going to be another Cry of Destruction from Sander's side, and then Lucas is basically almost all out of energy.
Primal Turbo puts the Aurora and Double Turbo onto the active. Now powering up, Lugia able to start swinging for 200 damage with the Tempest Dive. And just fingers crossed, hoping, praying that there is not an energy in hand for Sander, but with that Yveltal already being sent up,
yes,
we know Sander should have it.
Yeah, we've seen it in the hand already. We know it's coming. Cry of Destruction, turn after turn after turn. Lucas thinking, what can I do? I just lose all my energies every single turn.
Now, this is a lot of Yveltal in the discard pile now. If Lucas has 4 energies or a Double Turbo and 2 other energies left, there is a chance that he could knock out this Yveltal, and Sander would not have the response. Let's see, how many energies? 1. Oh, is it just 2?
Just 2, that's it.
Lucas concedes, shows the 2 energies, does not have a Double Turbo remaining. If Lucas had KO'd this Yveltal, I have to wonder if Lucas would have actually ended up winning this game, because there were multiple Yveltals in the discard pile at that point, but just not enough resources. Sander controls his way into a victory.
Yeah, huge congratulations to Sander, as he often does on streams, putting on a masterclass in how to play control archetypes and really showing off how he's adapted to control to this new format to an absolute near perfect degree.
Now, Lucas is far from eliminated. He's sitting at an excellent 10-2 record, already at 30 match points. We think most likely 35 match points is where players are going to want to be. So if Lucas wins 2 more matches, that's 36, which, out of 3 rounds, you hope you can make that happen.
Yeah, you absolutely would. But now, of course, you've got to be thinking, with Sander, we were talking earlier, he did just recently make top 4 at the North American Internationals. Is he on his way to do it again? I mean, he's currently sitting near the top of the standings.
Control always has such a hard time once it gets into top cut. Once you make it into top 8, the time rules change. There's more time for every single round, and we saw that be a factor in how Sander lost in top 4, because he lost a game in game 2. Game 3 did not complete, so whoever was ahead on prizes was able to win the match. That's how the time rules work in single elimination once we get to top cut. That is always something that's on the back of the Control player's mind. But this deck, I feel like you win 2-0 against Lugia pretty reasonably. So if Sander makes it into cut and hits a bracket with a bunch of Lugia in it, this could be the International Championships that Control is able to win.
I mean, we saw it just there, right? That was a clean 2-0 win against the Lugia deck. Might be one of those Control archetypes that, yeah, can actually go all the way, as it were, in terms of winning games quickly enough to maybe stand a chance even in top 8.
Of course, anything can happen in the game of the Pokemon TCG. Variance, of course, is a factor. There's always a chance you start a lone basic and pass, you have nothing else, and your opponent can just close it out. We'll have to see what happens, though. Hopefully nothing, we don't see anything like that on any of our matches for any players here. But congratulations to Sander, now sitting at a record of 10-1-1, 31 match points, needing to